My lighting is like this on purpose because it's Halloween and totally not because I have no way of diffusing my ring light. Hi everybody, I'm Rosie and welcome to another episode of What Even Is This YouTube Channel? A series of videos in which I watch movies, I read comics, I sometimes draw, and I still haven't figured out which one of them I'm best at. The way this particular series works is that people suggest to me movies on social media, mostly comic book movies by the looks of it, and I get on here and I give my thoughts on it after watching it a couple times. If you would like to participate in these suggestions, you can reach out to me on Twitter, you can reach out to me on the comment section, anything like that. I read all my comments. And if you like the video, feel free to like and subscribe. I try to put a video out every week. It has not worked out so far, but I am trying, I promise. At current, the most popularly suggested movies for me to watch are Blade, 1998, which we're doing today, and Wolverine Origins. Could I have said that worse? Wolverine Origins. Wolverine Origins. A movie that everybody feels very bad for me when I tell them that my followers want me to watch it. And can I just say, do not threaten me with a good time. So we're doing Blade today. The first Blade movie. And to be honest with you, I was shocked by this movie. If there ever was a movie that lived up to my personal childhood nostalgia, it's Blade. It's Blade. This movie came out in 1998, August 21st, 1998, a month before I was born. So thankfully, I've never had to live in a world without Blade 1998 in it. The movie begins in 1967 with Blade's mother going into the hospital about to give birth and bitten by a vampire. They use this cool backflipping wallet shot to tell you that she's 23 years old and she's a single mother. When I was a kid and my dad was bootlegging Blade and renting it out to people on VHS, I thought Blade was a horror movie, and I have held on to that belief most of my life, and I've never attempted to watch Blade again as an adult. When I was a kid, I loved Blade. I just couldn't watch it. I couldn't look directly at it. I think I must have seen it when I was 5 or 6, just very young. So I was scared of the movie, but I believe that Blade, the character, was out there and he was stopping all these vampires. You know, when you're a kid, you don't really know what's real and what's fake. But I think one of the reasons that I thought it was a horror movie is this first sequence with her giving birth. Because, holy God, giving birth is terrifying. It has to be one of the most unsettling and her, oh my God, just her huge pregnant belly and the fact that they're having complications and that she was attacked and that she doesn't survive this birth. Pretty freaky, I think. In 1998, we meet a woman with the world's stiffest bangs and a man who makes the funniest sounds in the world.
Yeah.
She takes him to one of those underground clubs. This one is inside a meatpacking factory. This club is intended to be our introduction to vampire nightlife. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think it's very well shot. I think the music fits it very well. It's very repetitive, the music, but it fits that nightclub atmosphere. At the same time, I do feel like they blew a lot of their budget in all the extras that are in this movie, because the rest of the movie just feels barren. It feels like nothing is happening outside our main characters and the people that get into fights with Blade and all that. Lots of flashing lights, people taking their clothes off, whatever. Our blonde idiot feels out of place. He's been rejected and ignored by the girl who brought him here. Most people on the floor shove him, they don't want to dance with him, they don't really have an interest in him. We as the audience know that he is not safe here, but he doesn't know that yet. You have this cool shot of hands rising, the music building, light coming up behind the DJ, and blood starts pouring from the sprinklers on the ceiling. And this is how the film makes us understand that vampires are decadent. They have an excessive bloodlust, at least these young half-vampires, and they enjoy playing with their food. So their lust for blood is clearly about more than nutrition. I love this scene, but I could do without what I think are chimpanzee noises that the vampires make when they when they hiss. This club scene is where we meet Blade. It's a bit difficult for me, at least, to visualize the people that they hurt in order to get all that blood. Either by killing them or stealing from the blood banks where people donate for sick people. Not cool. People still need blood transfusions. Just because somebody didn't actively die doesn't mean that taking blood in that way is good either. People need their transfusions, please. But really, I wish that they had brutalized this guy a little more. Oh my God, that sounds terrible, but I just mean just from a storytelling perspective, to get your audience sort of on Blade's side a little more, you have to drive home the importance of his role in this. If he hadn't been there, this could have been so much worse kind of thing. He has special weapons that disintegrate vampires into CGI skeletons and ash. And because these weapons are custom made, we can assume that the vampires can't turn it against them. I'm not even sure if Blade himself is allergic to garlic and silver and all those things. Blade gets into the shootout with Quinn's boys, Quinn being this kind of cowboyish comedic relief antagonist vampire. He's a funny character, but he's super gross at the same time. So we're led to believe that Quinn is a little bit stronger than all these other vampires that Blade is fighting. It's clear to me during this fight that Blade enjoys his job. It's a little bit of a game for him. Not in the way that he's inefficient or anything like that, but it feels good to win against these monsters. And Blade is not having it. He wants this guy dead. If staking him doesn't work, if shooting him doesn't work, he goes ahead and he sets him on fire. Our blonde idiot, actually went and hid in the little bathroom area where Blade stabs Quinn. Blade grabs the blonde guy, he checks him for bites, he makes sure there are none, and as the police come in looking for Blade, and looking for the person that caused all this, catastrophe in the blood and all that, Blade escapes, and they find him, and the blonde guy survives. Good for him, he made it. He's gonna be traumatized for the rest of his life, but... So the cops take Quinn's corpse to the medical examiners. We meet this guy, Curtis. He takes a blood sample. He takes it up to our secondary protagonist, Karen Jensen, a hematologist that we find had a previous romantic history with Curtis, the first guy. He invites her to go look at the body together, and they go. It was at this point that I noticed that Karen was bringing up just him trying to get with her a lot. And because this was my first time seeing these characters, I was like, well, she seems like a little bit overly defensive. Right up to the point where this guy gets creepy as hell. She specifically tells him, please do not bring up our relationship. Please do not try to get back with me. And he brings it up anyway. I'm sorry I doubted you, Karen. This man is garbage.
You ever have second thoughts about us?
But, he doesn't get to be an asshole for very long because he, literally just dies. And Karen is, the least bothered human being in the world. I have to assume it's the shock. And she is a pretty constant character later in the movie. But, if it were, just from my perspective, if that were me, I would be screaming. I would be running. There's a charred corpse eating my ex-boyfriend. Actually, I can see how she might have some mixed feelings about that just from my specific relationship history. Karen takes off. She runs. Quinn catches her, bites her, and despite having a perfectly good bloody buddy... Oh my god, can I speak? Good bloody... I'm not making this up. Hold on. Good, bloody body. Yes! Despite having a perfectly good corpse in the other room, he goes after her. Blade, who came to finish off Quinn, is in the process of getting him off her and kind of just stabbing him. Unfortunately, because the cops interrupted him, Quinn gets away. Blade comes back to Karen's body, and as he's walking away, he sort of gets a vision of when his mother died. I don't know how he would remember that as a newborn, but I bet it has something to do with their shared bond on a magical level. So he comes back to Karen's body. She's still alive, but the bite is festering, and he knows that she could turn. As a vampire hunter, he's supposed to kill her before that happens, but because he feels a strange connection with her, he decides to save her. Blade picks her up. Every police officer on the planet literally shows up to kill Blade. He's trying to find a way to get out, and he goes to the window that Quinn escaped out of, and he throws Karen, a human woman, out the window, across the street, all the way into the roof of the other building. I hope to God that, vampire bites briefly make you immune to these kinds of things, because you can't just toss injured, traumatized women across a street and not have them, pop like a fruit gusher. But Karen, being the wonderful, least bothered woman in the world, gets Blade to, reset her dislocated shoulder once both of them are on the other side of the roof. I don't fault her for not asking, who are you? What the hell is going on? Because the bite is probably making her delirious, and this is a pretty rough experience to go through. Even if she didn't like her ex-boyfriend for some reason, watching a person die in front of you it's traumatic, obviously. Blade takes her back to his headquarters where Whistler, a friend of Blade, injects her with essence of garlic to hopefully stop her shifting. Straight garlic juice, okay? Like, this is not a concoction that they make. This is just straight garlic juice right in her neck. And it is apparently a very painful experience because Blade has to hold her down and he has like a single hand on her chest. And I understand he is like a pretty strong guy. He doesn't need more than one hand to like hold this person down. But my god, like the absence of bedside manners it really paints Blade as this realistic, socially awkward guy who just got his hand on her. So we can assume that Blade is a pretty big problem for vampires. Like, the vampire elite unite to discuss him among like other little problems that they have. The vampire community is divided into purebloods, vampires that are born that way, and half-bloods, vampires that were turned sometime in their life. Vampire that owns the club is Deacon Frost, who honestly just looks like a Gossip Girl reject in this movie. I tried to find like some other movies that this actor is in, and there weren't any that I recognized. But fun fact, this guy plays a porn star named Dick Shadow in an Adam Sandler movie. Dick Shadow. If I didn't think it was confusing, I would just refer to him like that for the entire video. He's a half-blood, and he's hip and with the times, despite clearly being turned before labor rights existed. He's giving me Victorian urchin vibes. This movie is really weird about what powers vampires have and don't have, politically speaking. We know that they own the cops. They pay off law enforcement. They control the government, but also the government will be mad if they gather in numbers, like arbitrary world building. The amount of creasing leather in the scene really distracts you from this new versus old conflict that they're trying to insert, because all I hear is. Meanwhile, Blade goes to the store that caters to people like him to retrieve a dose of a serum that stops him from needing human blood to survive. We know that Blade is developing a resistance to the serum, and it really worries Whistler and the shop owner that provides him with it. I think the scene is a nice touch. It's nice to see Blade has these kinds of connections. It makes him feel like a grounded character outside this particular storyline. Like, if we never saw this plot go through, he would still have other things going on. Karen explores the room that she's been left with and encounters one of Blade's defense mechanisms. Like, his katanas, I don't even know how to explain this. His katanas, when the person is touching them, isn't Blade, and it responds by like literally just knifing them up, like spinning knives come out of it. This happens sometimes throughout the movie and sometimes it doesn't happen. It's a little bit confusing. I think you have to hold it a certain way. I think it has a little switch thing that only Blade and then later Karen realize how to use, but it's not something they go into too much detail about. Karen comes out, she's spying on Blade and Whistler as they use this serum on him, and Whistler suggests that because Karen is a hematologist, she could potentially help them develop a cure or another serum to keep Blade from needing human blood, since this one is having such a hard time working. She's not a prisoner here, but when she tries to escape, they do stop her, which isn't particularly comforting for anybody, especially a woman that has just been attacked and taken away from her home. They're explaining to her where she is, and like Whistler takes out this like gas from the pump and he starts putting gas in Blade's car, but for some reason he just sort of like spills it everywhere, and this cannot be an accidental shot, because I think an oversight like this is ridiculous. Like, this has to be here so you understand that Whistler is so in his own head and in all this vampire stuff that loading a tank without blowing them up doesn't occur to him, because after he spills that gas everywhere, he lights a match and then his cigarette. Like, oh my god, you are gonna blow up. After Blade takes Karen back to her apartment, he is very mindful of whether she has any sensitivity to sunlight. We pivot back to Frost in the middle of translating some ancient texts which he isn't supposed to have access to. This is me being overly judgy, I think, but there's this bit where Frost sort of touches Dragonetti's cheek and then his neck, and as a result, Dragonetti retreats from the room and leaves him alone in like these vampire archives that he as a half-blood doesn't have authorization to be in. It is so confusing to me. Like, you guys don't have security guards? You can't call security on this man? My boyfriend puts the lid on this most of the time that I use it, and he's not here today, so I don't even know if this is on right. So Blade drops Karen at her apartment. He tells her to leave town, that these people have her marked and they will chase her. They will find her and eventually either kill her or finish the shift. Blade leaves her. She's on the elevator ride home. She notices two people in front of her with strange tattoos in the back of their necks. We later learn from Blade that these tattoos are glyphs. They're the mark of a familiar being a vampire wannabe or somebody who serves a vampire in hopes of one day proving their loyalty enough to be turned into one. I don't know if you guys have watched What We Do in the Shadows. There's a gag in that show that pretty much every familiar never gets to become a vampire and the vampires are just using them for free labor. So there's a police officer that breaks into Karen's room to attack her, to kill her. And Blade, he throws the guy around the room. He's like breaking all of Karen's stuff. Blade lives in a warehouse, so I imagine he doesn't have to worry about things like rent or like furniture or anything like that. It's all the same to him whether or not Karen wanted to like maybe keep some of the things that were on the shelves, maybe take them with her so she can move somewhere and like start over. I understand why she's not too mad about it. Blade just saved her life for the second time, but like, damn, poor coffee table. It didn't deserve this. Blade walks this police officer, down the stairs or through the elevator or something like that into like plain daylight with his hands behind his back. There's blood pouring out of his nose. Not subtly either. Like he is like shaking this bloody looking man, smashing his head on the roof of the car. Nobody seems to notice or care or interrupt. Like, honestly, good for them, but in the middle of this, like, scuffle he has with the cop, he pulls out his gun in the middle of a crowded street, and it's not a little gun either. Like, Blade's gun is thick, and as the guy runs away from him, he aims the gun into the crowd. And people stop screaming, not when Blade puts the gun away, or when he leaves the scene, but when the running guy rounds the corner. Like, this man just pulled out a gun. How are you more upset by the guy running away that the man who pulled a gun in your vicinity and he's still there? People are just calmly walking around Blade. You sort of vaguely hear, what's wrong with him? So Blade and Karen know that the cop is gonna come back. Why? Because the cop was carrying a delivery of blood from a bank that he has to turn in to one of Frost's clubs or he's gonna be in some real trouble. After he comes back for the blood, they follow him to this club. Weirdest club that I have ever seen in my life, vampire or human. I think the meat hooks were a step up from this. And just to be clear, so you can visualize how Blade gets into this club, he has, by the time he reaches the door to the vampire archives that he forces this cop to reveal, he has punched the bouncer through a glass door, he has punched the security guard, a patron, the bartender, followed this cop into the kitchen or storage room, and absolutely nobody comes after him. He makes it through this unscathed, and there was nothing to indicate that patrons were like running away en masse, like super scared of Blade. No, everybody was just in their seats, listening to their music and just minding their own business. I just love the Blade universe. Everybody has like the shortest attention span in the world, or if something is not directly happening at them, they don't care. They don't have time for it. Like, mind your own business. That is the moral lesson in this movie. Mind your own business. Back with Deacon, he's continuing to translate his text, this time at home, which, like, why didn't he do that in the first place? Deacon continues to translate his text at home, and we see this bed that he has in his room that just makes me claustrophobic looking at it. Like, how can we make coffins cool and the room as barren as possible? Is like what I imagined the question was when they built this set. His girlfriend gets out of the bed and tells him not to take too long doing his work, that he should come out into the party, and when he does, he hears from his cop familiar dude that he was unable to kill Karen and that Blade got into his archives are very important to him. As punishment, he eats and discards of this guy's body, and like he shares his blood with his second girlfriend, Greasy Emma Frost. I couldn't be a vampire. It makes you so messy. Get a straw or something. Just stick it in there, please. Sippy lids is what they need. At least whoever did her effects made her look cool. She has like blood splatter here on her cheek. He just looks like a clown, like just a straight up clown. So Pagliacci decides he wants wants Blade and he wants him alive, and he orders Quinn to hunt him down. Back at the archives, Blade encounters a vampire named Pearl that has been helping Frost translate the text. Pearl tells Blade about the prophetic ritual Frost is trying to trigger, and it's a very simple prophecy. We love a simple prophecy. The spirits of the 12 will awaken the Blood God. Karen has this UV flashlight that they're using to torture Pearl into telling them about the ritual, and at one point Blade leaves her alone with it, and she gets mean with it. Like, I don't blame her for it at all. Like, if vampires killed my ex, tried to kill me twice in one day, here with Blade telling her that she's useless and she's like in the way, like I would get mean too. Like, I would get mean. And after that interaction, just Blade very clearly sees her in a different light where she can take care of herself kind of way. So the vampire archives have a section storing like the actual physical texts that are digitized and that Deacon is translating, which makes like the Slack security around this area like even more confusing to me. Eventually Quinn and his men do arrive. They do pin down Blade by tricking him, but he doesn't get to do a whole lot of damage on Blade before Blade sort of starts laughing and calls in Whistler. That he blows a hole in the wall, and Blade and Karen and Whistler all escape into subway tunnels, pursued by Quinn and his men. Blade and Karen make it across the tracks pretty easily. Quinn makes it across the tracks also. The rest of his men do not. They're separated from Whistler, who just kind of like literally into thin air, just gone. And Blade is like, he can take care of himself. And I'm like, yeah, but like, where'd he go? It's like, there's a limited amount of space. Where did he go? They have a cute little sign in the train tracks that says driverless train, so we as the audience can feel less awful when this thing like blows up or somebody gets injured or something. When Quinn crashes across into them, he throws Karen back onto the tracks where Blade's katana is. Unlike the last two times we've seen her and another guy grab it, the katana doesn't hurt her at all. Like, my guess maybe is because it's got a timer on it, or some kind of mechanism, like I said earlier, or feelings, like a sword with feelings, like you know, Bleach. After this like fun little encounter that they have with Quinn, Karen has to reset Blade's shoulder, which if you remember he had to do for her earlier in the movie. Yes, full circle. Feminism. She didn't throw him out a window though, so very flawed right there. Blade has to recover and regenerate from the number that Quinn did on him. Back at their safe house, Karen is left to speak with Whistler, who made it back on his own somehow. The conversation they have, it reveals Blade's backstory. He reveals Blade's backstory to Karen, as well as his own backstory. He had daughters, he had a wife, and a vampire sort of tortured them, killed them, made him choose who would die first. As exposition stands, it felt very organic to me. When a couple people go through a traumatic experience together, it's normal for them to open up and kind of overshare. I thought this would be a great opportunity to hear about Karen's past, her family, her friends, the things she has lost by taking up arms with them. I just wanted to know about somebody who might be worried about her. I would have liked to see that she has a life outside the storyline, and it would help cement that feeling of a foot in each world aspect that the Blade series, they like to talk about, they like to give it lip service, but they don't show it to me, you know? Like, I want to see it. Maybe if Karen was also an orphan, that's an easy way to create a connection for your audience to understand. Blade is very close to the memory of his mother. Every vampire that he fights is a stand-in for the one that killed her. Just very intense stuff. Like, the one that took his mother from him, he's the one that he wants to hunt down. So give me a similar reason for Karen. Give me a parallel. Give me something that she can really empathize with him. Maybe her mother died of a blood-related illness. She mentioned sickle cell later in the movie, or maybe she died of patient neglect and that drove her to become a doctor, a scientist, an advocate, and she wants to combat that in a way. I really like Karen. Her actress makes her feel like a really three-dimensional character. There's weight to her. She's very constant in the way that she behaves. You understand her motivations, basically. I just want to know more about her. Deacon, Quinn, and that girl. Hold on, I feel mean. Like, let me get her name. Mercury. Her name's Mercury. They killed Dragonetti, the head vampire old dude and by exposing him to the sun, and they take his place at the vampire table. Supposedly, these vampires that Deacon is with, they're the ones that control the world, but they have never once given me that vibe besides mentioning that they had like offshore accounts. Like, if they have money, if they have power, why do they not have heirs? Why wouldn't Dragonetti's adopted kid, or maybe real kid, or somebody turn, or even somebody he just hired, like, why not have that be his heir? Why is it just Deacon walks in there and I'm just not scared by any of the purebloods, or even like a little bit intimidated. Like, they just seem a bunch of like lily-livered, spineless, big old dumb dudes. Like, they roll over for Deacon because he showed them like Dragonetti's fangs. My dentist could do that. Like, that's an extraction, sir. Karen is attempting to create a vampire cure. In that process, she creates a compound called EDTA that when mixed with vampire blood causes it to explode, which she can weaponize for Blade. After the scene, Whistler noticed that there's something wrong with Karen. They apparently didn't catch the virus on time, and she's likely going to become a vampire in a day or two. This is how we raise our stakes back again. Like, I appreciate that Karen's vampirism is not just like a one-off at the beginning of the movie to build up brief suspense that they throw at the beginning, but at the same time it doesn't really go anywhere. She like finds a cure and all that. Slightly disappointed at that. Blade is just desperate for his serum. Every day is harder to control his urges. And when he goes downtown to the shop, he finds Frost instead. Frost knows everything about him. He knows about Whistler, he knows about Karen, he knows about the shop that he goes to and his blood serum. And he comes to offer Blade a truce. He needs Blade to complete the ritual, so he wants to use him, basically. And he wants to do it the easy way. He has this like random child, and it's the middle of the day, it's literally light outside, and he isn't burning to death, which he should be. He's not a daywalker, and he took precautions to hide from the sun when he killed Dragonetti. So like, maybe I missed something, maybe I'm just stupid, which is, yeah. Actually, I'm pretty sure he's wearing some kind of cream or foundation to slow the effects of the sun that it has on his skin. It wouldn't surprise me if a vampire invented something like that. Their little rendezvous falls apart. Frost throws this child that he has with him into the middle of traffic. Blade is forced to let him go in order to rescue the girl, and then just immediately releases her into the wild. Like, he just says, go home, and the girl goes. Like, she has already been kidnapped once, sir. What's to stop it from happening again? While Blade is out, Deacon somehow gets back to the warehouse where Karen and Whistler are before Blade gets there, question mark? Like, they were at the same place, supposedly had to travel the same distance, and Blade's car is pretty fast, so I have no idea how he made it there. Vampire teleportation, one imagines. Frost is such a weird but satisfying character to me. Like, at first, he's very put together, very sure of himself, but as his frustrations mount up, he becomes erratic, frantic, violent. He smashes Whistler's head in this scene, leaving him bitten for Blade to find, and he takes Karen as bait, basically. So by the time Blade arrives, Frost is gone, and it's too late for Whistler. Like, it was a few hours before Karen was considered too far gone for the garlic to work. I don't know, like, was Blade gone for hours? Was it like double-digit hours? Because it was dark and then it was light between where she was bit and where she was considered almost too far gone. Oh, but I think it was a combination of Whistler's existing injuries, the fact that he had terminal cancer, his age that affected the virus's takeover. See, that makes a lot of sense. I hate when I talk myself out of like a funny plot hole, like a funny joke. It's a sad scene. It adds to the burden that Blade is already carrying. This man was clearly like a father to him, and he has to hand him his gun, walk away, and let him die because Whistler would rather end that way than become one of the creatures that killed his daughters, killed his wife. By knowing he's the final piece of the puzzle, Blade doesn't really have a choice here. He has to go save Karen, essentially, because she will either be killed or turned. And then Frost will go just right back to hunting him, this time as a lone wolf, without Whistler, without Karen. So his best bet is to go and find her. Frost wants to turn Karen because she interests him. He acts like he knows so much about everything, and he's so old and so educated, and like you think he would be interested in Karen as a hematologist or even as Blade's sidekick. I would take it. Being a human capable of keeping up with vampires has to mean something, but no, he just like he goes on about her, like her body and her sex appeal, and Blade breaks into this creepy Scientology looking compound on his... They have like this stupid joke that I love. It's my favorite in the whole movie.
I don't think you understand. I mean, this dude is fucking bad. Like, he's like, you have 20 guys around him. I was there, man. He's got shit he throws at you. You
like the sword, the sword,
exactly.
shit, yeah, you can throw it in the air, catch it underneath.
Exactly.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
They talk about him and they're like, he's just one guy. He's one guy on foot. How bad can he be? And it cuts to Blade literally rocking their shit. Blade makes his way up the building. He ends up in Frost's bedroom that we saw earlier with the little coffin thing, instead of the room where Frost is like sending instructions from, because we want him to meet Frost's girlfriend, who apparently doesn't do anything except get on and off the bed. And this girlfriend, it's Blade's mom. It's Blade's alive mom. See, Frost, you can kidnap my friends. You can kill my father figures. But I draw the line at fucking my mom. We find out Blade's mom is actually a vampire. I forgot that this was a plot point. She left him behind as a baby to be with Frost. I was sad that that's the direction we took the character in at first, like warping the memory of a woman that Blade viewed as a victim, somebody who could have potentially raised them with love, into this like new creature who's very aggressive towards Blade in a very uncomfortable way. But I understand vampirism fundamentally changes people on a neurochemical level. They just have different personalities and morals. I believe if his mother were human, she would probably still be a good person, but she just like got caught up in a bad thing in a bad place, and now she's like this. Another theory of mine is that Frost as her sire, like the guy who changed her, and this is not something the movie explicitly tells me or that I've read in the comics, because I read Blade, but I read Blade when he like is with the X-Men and with other characters that I know about, just like that overlap. So I don't know if this is true, but I feel like just the way he interacts with Mercury, with Quinn, there's a scene where Quinn is like really pissed and Deacon just talks him down very quickly. It suggests to me, like as their sire, he has some kind of mind control over them. Frost takes advantage of Blade's shock. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't be shocked, not who wouldn't take advantage. By this point, he hasn't had his serum in a while. As we saw, he was interrupted by Frost when he went downtown. So he's weak from hunger, he's weak from the fight, he's emotionally as well as physically exhausted from seeing his mom and just getting tased all over the place.
My dad started watching TV while I was recording, so now the TV is messing up all my audio, and I just realized my mic is not on.
Okay, now it's on. He discusses taking Karen's cure, which she's still developing. She warns him that it will take away his powers. The very same thing that Blade has depended on his entire life, the one thing that could save him in a situation like this. And Blade has to decide whether or not he can live with that. Frost brings Blade and 12 vampires that are pure-blooded, the ones from the vampire conference room, summon the blood god La Magra, a name that apparently means nothing. I thought so when I heard it, but I wanted to be sure, so I googled it, and yeah, means nothing. Them try to fight back despite me imagining that they all have the same vampire strength and other weird vampire abilities that all of them have. But I guess that this Mayan mortal looking man over here, Deacon Frost, he's just too intimidating. It's during this first scene that it's the EDTA, which Karen synthesized, and he believes that that is his blood serum, and Blade almost baits him into taking it. But in the end, Frost tosses it out into the middle of the chamber in the temple there. And remember where that fell. It's a surprise tool that will help us later. Karen is then taken by Quinn and Frost to be fed to this zombie-like creature that Quinn claims to have bit. The zombie didn't fully shift into a vampire, something that sometimes happens to some of the people that are bit and left alive. He lives in some weird omnivorous in-between where vampires and humans are alike can be his prey. So they throw her into this pit, and despite devising this gruesome death for Karen, neither of them stick around to see if she'll actually die. seems like a waste of theatrics. If you want her dead or you want to watch her suffer, why not stay? Why not make sure? So the zombie in the pit, this man that has been left half turned, is Karen's ex-boyfriend Curtis. I honestly think this is one of those scenes that really made me think of Blade as a horror film. It really belongs there. The zombie is very scary. It's very dark during the scene. Karen seems very afraid. I wish it was a longer scene. I wish we had more development of her relationship with Curtis to back the weight of the scene. When he's screaming her name, like, is she gonna remember that moment as something sad, as something cathartic? Is it a fitting punishment for an awful person? Is it tragic? I'm leaning towards him not deserving to go out like this, because I got nothing else to work with other than he's a bit of an asshole.
Tell me, Karen, do you ever have second thoughts about us?
But I also don't care that much, you know what I mean? While Karen's getting out of this pit, Blade is trapped in, like, sort of strapped into this thing that looks like an Iron Maiden to be bled for the ritual. His mom is there to supervise. She's making sure it all goes smoothly before returning to Frost. And this scene, is it me or is she standing way too close to him? She needs to back up a little bit. I could be wrong. Maybe it's like perfectly normal, but something about like their lips almost brushing is just off to me. Below, Mercury, Greasy Girl, is overseeing the preparations for the 12 purebloods to be sacrificed to La Magra. She's very devoted to Deacon Frost. She shares his vision of the world. She's got these like demure purebloods just standing around in a circle, not fighting back. And she's very proud of her role as Deacon's enforcer. So tell me why, as his follower, as his, like, acolyte, when we're moments away from Frost's big ritual, like the fulfillment of this prophecy he's living for, and they're all rallying behind it, why the fuck does she kill this fucking random guy and brings the count of 12 purebloods to 11. He said 12 spirits will summon the blood god. 12. Ma'am, count. And not once is anybody like, oh no, she totally fucked up the ritual. Like, it just goes on without anybody like pressing pause and like finding somebody who's pure-blooded. It ends up fucking like the whole thing up. So instead of La Magra, you got like La Magra Light, La Sparkling Water, La Croix. Karen, out of her zombie death pit, frees Blade, but not before his blood hits Deacon in the head and like, triggers everything into high gear. She knows Blade is the only one that can stop this thing, despite like the only reason he can stop the blood god in the first place is that Mercury fucked up the ritual, which Karen had no way of knowing. It doesn't go off right, so he's not really the blood god. He's like a different thing. No one mentions this in the movie. Deacon is not like pissed or scared or worried. I had to Google it to make sure I wasn't crazy, but yeah. The fact that Mercury fucks up the ritual and like fumbles it is the only reason that Blade is actually able to stop the blood god, because otherwise he would be far too powerful for him. Put that in the movie, you know? Maybe the movie's trying to be smart and I'm just really dumb. Like, I'm over here thinking, your audience is not gonna understand it. But people clearly did. I clearly did. And I was just like, hey, why didn't you spoon feed it to me? Karen sacrifices herself. She offers Blade her own blood, knowing that drinking blood is not something he wants to do. But neither of them really have a choice. He needs to regain his strength if they're even gonna get out of there. And this is one of those scenes in vampire movies that are very important to just the vampire genre overall. Like when the human love interest, and I was wholly on board with this, when they sort of give their own blood to show their loyalty, their trust, their appreciation. So I was very happy about this scene when it started, but as it continued for longer and longer, and it continued to last almost 2 minutes, as in like an undeniable stand-in for very weird sex. Like, not very explicit, except yeah, definitely a little bit explicit. My mind is not in the gutter, okay? Like, if it is in there, it's because the Blade movie like kicked it right in the gutter then. So after Blade's first time, drinking human blood. Blade has to fight his mom. Criss Angel, over in the temple chamber, has mind freaked the ritual back into gear. These CGI skeletons are just moving violently through his body. Blade stabs and kills his mother, sort of understanding that she is not the person he would like her to be, nor is she somebody who's safe to leave just walking around hurting people. None of Deacon Frost's acolytes or anything, Quinn and Mercury or whatever, no one seems to want to talk about how the blood tornado that's supposed to tear through their enemies, turning everything in its path to a vampire, which, then what do they eat? Well, it's not there. Just didn't happen. Frost just has like weird eyes and he can regenerate a lot faster than normal just because he's like made of blood. I'm a little shaky on the details of the fight he has with Blade. I know that there was originally a different ending where the Blood God was like a separate entity from Frost, and you get that some of the dialogue wasn't changed back from that ending because earlier Frost refers to the Blood God as he and they, just a completely other creature and not something that he becomes. The movie suffers a little bit from the main villain not being scary or intelligent as he should be. They play the same punch and martial art sounds repeatedly over and over again, which I started noticing on my second watch, and it takes you out of it. I'm not big on fights and like action. I'm not the best judge of whether it's good, and I'm not one that like remains interested on it. Mercury and Quinn, Frost's people, they're killed during this fight. Mercury being killed by Karen. Most of Frost's henchmen actually are just killed during this fight. He never gets a chance to show off. It feels like as though his personality is weighing down the scary blood god concept, which makes sense. If he was supposed to ascend like he physically did in like the stupid little elevator that he rode, this is like a millennia old ritual where does the elevator come in? So yeah, like that intimidation, that's scary aspect of it just doesn't come across in this fight. Maybe they had turned off the lights a twinge. So in the end, like Blade defeats him with a combination of the two items, like the special tools that they've kind of been like hammering into your head to remember from his kit, Karen's EDTA, the explosive liquid that she created, and that little finicky hilt of his sword that goes off whenever like he basically tells it to, or when it's convenient for the plot. Combined, those two things cause a massive explosion that kill Deacon Frost, okay? The CGI takes away from the fight, I'm sure, but there are a lot of these like tongue-in-cheek moments where the movie is aware of its own absurdity and like reaction shots and Blade kind of like mouthing to himself when Deacon fits back together where he cut him in half. In my opinion, a movie doesn't have to be serious or look good to be cool. It just has to like feel cool. It halfway satisfied that for me. It felt cool. I like watching the stupid little smacky sword fight they have. That wasn't very well choreographed, I don't think. But the rest of it was fine. I enjoyed it. And thus ends the reign of the Blood God Light. After the fight, Blade and Karen, they walk out into the sun. She will be taking the cure she developed, so she will not be becoming a vampire, but Blade tells her that he does not plan to take it. Especially after this experience, he needs his powers to continue fighting his war across the world. And all he wants is for her to stay at his side, developing him a new serum, keep up with his building immunity. God, I unironically enjoyed that movie so much both times that I watched it. I kept noticing little things, like those little jokes. This was supposed to be like a Halloween video, but this movie was not nearly as scary as I remember it being as a child, which was nice because now I can watch it all over again and not dread it. I found it on Hulu. It was uploaded there recently. You might not feel the same way as I do. The movie has definitely aged a little bit. I enjoy movies that make no sense and that they don't take themselves too seriously. Blade does like fall off a little bit towards the end. But as a movie considered to have like kickstarted the superhero movie trend we see today, it's a classic, and I do feel like you should watch it. As much as you watch like the old X-Men movies and the old Superman movies and all those kinds of things. It's classic. That's all I can say about it. It's a classic. Alright, so that was Blade 1998. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys liked the video. I hope to see you all next time. I'm Rosie, signing off.